We've always had room in our hearts for film and TV, not just on Netflix, but tape and disc and theaters. Also, God forbid that they take it all away and leave us nothing to broadcast to loyal listeners. We'll binge watch every single movie, so you don't have to. What else are we here for? Coming to you every week. Listen to us while you're busy. Luckily, we forgot to grow up. Hey everybody, it's Craig.
Hey, it's Scott. Crickets. I can't make a chirping noise.
That sound was really good. Andrew's without internet because somebody decided to dig through a fiber line somewhere, we think. At least that's my theory. I've seen it before.
Yeah, a small town in Ontario. Yeah.
Exactly. In most scenarios, they'd have someone from the cable company out, same day, repairing that cable.
Not in rural Ontario.
It looks like they're going on a week to repair a cable.
Yeah.
I don't know how that happens, but here we are anyway. No Andrew. So which sucks because he misses out on talking space movies.
Which I would assume he has lots of opinions about. I feel like a lot of these he'd be pretty like.
I don't know actually because I can't really get a handle on in my head right now on whether he's a space movie guy or he's not a space movie guy.
Well, I mean more so I think he'd be very critical of them all in one way or another. Like, you know what I mean? Like either he'll like them and he'll like them just cause, or I feel like he'd be really critical being like, well, this isn't really possible. You know what I mean?
Depends on his mood.
Yeah, I think so. That also, I think, plays into it. I think that plays into all of our enjoyment of the movies, but
his in particular.
Yes, definitely. But yes, so space movies. I've got 2 articles up. Do we want to start with they're going to have a lot of crossovers. They're both the best space movies of. One's all Esquire, right. One's The Ringer.
Let's see if they cover the list of space movies I could come up with off the top of my head that I have seen in the time it took us to set up the podcast. Let's see. Let's see if it covers everything I have here. And we are going to clarify we're not talking Star Wars, right?
Well, I was going to say I'm not going to include it. These lists might include it. If they do, we're not going to say much about it. We've done Star Wars episodes. We've talked Star Wars.
Into one gigantic package of a dozen movies or so. And
to me, Star Wars, as much as it obviously is a space movie, it's like I feel like space movies have to have a little bit more less the setting and more a little bit of the focus of the story has to involve space a little more. Like, yes, Star Wars, it's about wars in space. I get that. But I mean more so like it is a lot of just kind of, good versus evil is the main theme of it. Whereas in some of these, it's you got to survive outer space is a little bit more my idea of a traditional space movie, if that makes sense. Like you're dealing with a problem that is directly space related.
Perfect. Well, that covers everything that I have on my list. So let's see what's on these other ones.
All right. Shall we start with the 15 list or the 25 list? They're going to cover a lot of the same stuff.
Let's go with the 25 list and assume that everything that's on that one is also on the 15. Yeah,
so I'm going to get rid of the 15 one, and we're just going to go through. So this is The Ringers, the 25 best space movies ever. They've got a couple did not make the cuts at the top, so that we'll go over quickly. Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Okay.
That one, again, I kind of agree because it's the settings in space, but the problem or the themes of the story don't really revolve too much around space necessarily. Well, it kind of does because I'm trying to remember exactly what the plot of this one is. I can't remember exactly. What is it? Yeah, he just ends up on it. I can't remember exactly. I agree that it shouldn't have made the cut, though, because it's more the setting than the, necessarily what's happening, if that makes sense.
Yep.
That's not coming out clear. This is going to be a really gray area for this stuff. But I'm assuming that one wasn't on your list, though. No, I didn't think so. What about Sunshine from 2007?
I don't think I've seen it.
Neither have I. I've heard a lot about this. My favorite podcast / YouTuber, Mr. Sunday Movies, he loves this movie, and he always talks about it and makes reference to it because his co-host hates it. So that's the only reason I know about this movie. So can't tell you whether it should be on the list or not. Next is Fifth Element, which I really enjoy. Again, it's probably I'd put this closer to like a Star Wars type of thing, where it's like the setting is space.
Space movie.
Exactly. they're like, yes, they go to a different planet, but it's also like it's not really revolving around. Well, kind of does. It's a weird thing, but it's weird when you get into the sci-fi space ones, because it's also like, well, the focus, like, you know what I mean? Because it's weird. Yeah.
Well, then I guess since we're gonna have that discussion about what
Yeah.
qualifies it, if the entire concept of your movie revolves around something that comes from space,
Well, see, that
does
to
that
me,
qualify? Because then you start splitting hairs on, is an alien movie a space movie, or is it not a space movie?
that's fair point, because to me it kind of is, but kind of isn't.
I would say that it's more space. I would say it qualifies as more of a space movie
Yeah.
than a movie that is
Just simply the
set in
setting.
space.
Yeah, I'd agree.
But then you've got like different degrees of what.
Yeah, that's where we get into this weird
because-
thing.
Because then you play the game of, well, is E.T. a space movie?
Exactly, and to
I
me
don't
it's like,
think E.T. is a space movie because
I wouldn't,
all of
but
the
it's about an
problems
alien.
are
Yeah.
Earth related, even though there is an alien.
yes,
same
he's kind of the
thing-
MacGuffin more than anything in that, then too. Like, if that makes sense, like he's the plot driver of it. Like, yes, he's the reason for the problems with the humans, but
Yeah.
it's also like,
Where I would argue that Arrival is more of a space movie.
I haven't seen that one, but I do know a little bit about it. That's the one where they like arrive and they've got to like figure out their language or
Yeah.
how to communicate with them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that, and I think that kind of falls like with Independence Day, where it's like that's an invasion. To me, that's a space movie in a sense, because it's very much the problem is space is coming for them in a sense, or like
Yes.
things from outer space are coming for them. So, yeah. I think like where I really draw the line is if all space does is the setting, like the reason for you to have like different settings besides Earth, then I'm a little bit less like it's a space movie and more just a
So
thing.
Guardians of the Galaxy is not a space movie to you.
That's a weird one, but I'd probably put that more like Star Wars, I think,
Yeah,
where it's
it
like
has to be.
it takes place
Same
in
thing
space.
Same thing with pretty much any Thor movie.
Yeah, exactly. Like those are,
Can't be not space movies.
and because that's where we get into this, like, because that's like what the thing with like superheroes and certain ones about like alien races, where it's like, well, you're telling a story about that race, not about like they just happen to live in space. If that makes sense, it's this weird
Yeah.
kind of outside perspective I like kind of
Yes.
take on it, that it's like, well, I'm trying to like be in the escapistness of that they exist in a world. So,
But then is Avatar a space movie?
ooh, it is an alien planet that they're exploring, and I gotta classify.
But that's
See, that-
that's the only setting though, isn't it?
Yes,
I mean,
but
I will
so,
admit that I haven't seen it.
yeah, that's fair. It's very long. So it is about them kind of discovering this. Well,
Because
Not-
then, because see, and then now we
it's
play more
this
games
weird one.
because
Yeah.
if you argue that if you argue that Avatar is a space movie, then you can argue that Oblivion is a space movie.
Which one's Oblivion?
That's the one with Tom Cruise, and he finds out that he's like there's clones of him, and they're working for these aliens that are harvesting the remaining resources from the planet.
Yeah, that's a gray area one to get
See,
into.
but it's the same.
There's
it's
a
the
lot of
same
gray
idea,
area. Mainly because I put my I put down a stand on this that I probably shouldn't have. I should have thought
Yeah.
this one through more.
you have created a set of criteria, and now I'm going to try to fit everything into it.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with it. I just didn't think some of these through as to the extent, you know what I mean? Because some of these I think of as sci-fi and not necessarily
Which
space.
is where I would
but it's
I would qualify Oblivion, Avatar into the broader sci-fi
yes.
category, and not specifically space movies.
Yeah. So like, and I think that comes down to like, is the movies focus on a kind of like a technological thing versus is it focused on space being like the reason or the yeah, like kind of the motivation in a sense. Like I prefer when it's like, for me, it's when like space like plays in a sense a role in the story, if that makes sense, beyond just setting. Because like setting to me, it's like, well, you can make up anything, right? Like it could be a parallel dimension, and this is actually Earth, and it just has aliens. You know, like that's, as weird as that sounds, it's kind of like, well, that's in a sense how I like to look at certain stories, because we're always telling them from a different perspective. Well, not always, but you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I'm really painting myself into a corner. More and more too, as we talk more about it. But
by the end of this, nothing's going to be a space movie.
No, none of them. Because Earth is in space too, so it's like, well,
they're either all space movies or none of them are space movies.
Exactly. But yeah, so next up on we haven't even gotten to the top 25 of this one's list. So the next one is Hidden Figures, which I believe is about NASA scientists who hadn't, like, I think believe there were 3 women who hadn't got like any credit on doing like a lot of like a big part in having like stuff. Yeah, like the space missions be successful, and this movie's about like the role they actually played in it finally being told. So that one again is a weird one, because it's the setting's not space, but the theme of the story is sending people. It's about the space program, so it's like, yeah. So yeah, definitely.
Is a space movie. Reluctantly, it's a space movie.
Yes, well, because it's about space, the technology relating to space exploration. But anyway, so the next one is Interstellar, which
didn't make the cut.
Didn't make the top 25 according to The Ringer.
I'm surprised. That is one of the ones that's on my list over here.
And I won't argue that this one I would say is a space movie.
It's 100% a space movie.
Because I couldn't tell you too much about the sci-fi aspects beyond wormholes, which again are space stuff. So, like, so yeah, no, I can't really. I haven't seen this one. I've seen this movie once, so I can't really talk too much about it. No, I've seen it just
once too. But
yeah, it's just
forever etched in my memory.
To me, it was so like so little happened in it that I was just like, it just,
oh my God,
it kind
so
of washed over me.
Long.
Yeah, it's very long and very like.
And Matthew McConaughey doesn't shut up.
And like, to me, the concepts they go through in that are things that I like picked up from sci-fi shows in the 90s. Like when I was not the 90s, I guess the early 2000s, when I was like a teenager and started getting into sci-fi stuff, which every sci-fi show explores multiverses and wormholes and all these different things where you explore all these, because when you have a sci-fi show, you got to try every science fiction trope ever. So it's like, okay, yeah, no, I already got this one. So like, it was a little, I don't want to say tedious, but it just wasn't.
It's so long.
It didn't drag me in too much. It was a little too much. Like, it was beautifully shot. I'll give them that. It looked really great, but other than that, it didn't really do much for me. The story, I mean, and that's where I become a dick sometimes, because I'll poke at fun. I'll poke at certain stories because I'm like, you guys are pretending that this science is right, but this is very not, like, very much so no. And if I can pick at that with my only grade 9, 10 physics, like, come on. Yeah. What year was mandatory for physics?
Grade 10 science. That's it.
Was it? I thought, okay, so I did take a separate physics class then in grade 11 then, because I took at least.
My grade 11 physics class?
It's possible. Was Osama in our class? He was in mine. I know he was in mine. So
it's been a long time.
It's over a decade, like, or close to a decade since at least that class then. And I did an extra year of high school, so. Anywho, shall we get to the actual top 25 now?
Let's do the top 25.
So the first one is Galaxy Quest.
Ooh, that's on my list.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I love Galaxy Quest.
I don't know why that's surprising to me, because it definitely is right up your alley.
Oh, yeah.
But it does surprise me a little bit. Like, to me, this feels more like, I don't know, I guess this feels too cult classic-y to me, even though it's not a cult movie. It isn't really at all. It's a popular movie. To me, it feels like it has that status, if it makes sense. Like,
I love that movie.
Oh, no, it's great. I haven't watched it. It's been too long since I've watched it, but...
It's on and off Netflix.
Okay. I'm definitely going to watch it next time it is on, just because it is great. And again, I love this one especially because it definitely is a space movie.
It's teetering on the edge, I would argue.
Oh yeah, it's very close to being in the sci-fi realm, but it definitely is a space. Yeah.
Like
Yeah, it's
It
close.
almost falls into that category.
It is close, but the fact that it's a like it's based off of a show, like a space show,
Yeah.
and then they get dragged into space by these people who think that I still just love that concept. Just
They
aliens,
just think that it's a documentary.
yeah, just like just footage that they got, like security cam
Cast
footage
is
or whatever.
Really good.
Oh, it's such a like at the time I didn't realize how what a like when it came out, it was before my
Yeah.
like I knew Tim Taylor was in it, or not. See, Tim Allen.
Tim Allen?
Because he was Tim Taylor to me at the time, and that's how
That is Alan Rickman's best role, and no one's ever going to change my mind.
I won't argue with it.
This is in light of me watching several Harry Potter movies.
Well, see, and I enjoy him more in this because he's great as Snape, but it's also very kind of just. I don't know. There's not much. I don't want to say there's not much to it. It's just it's a very somber character, and he does
Yeah.
it very well. But it's also like there's not much. I can't relate to him as much. He's just very. He's too dark even for me,
Yeah.
which is a very tough thing to do because I really liked Anakin Skywalker in Revenge of the Sith. That's why I wear hoodies to this day. But yeah,
Yeah. I love
uh,
that movie.
yeah. Can't argue with it being on the list. Probably should be higher than 25, but that's another debatable thing we'll get to throughout this. So the next one, number 24, is Gattaca.
Okay, I never saw that.
I've only vaguely heard of it. It's from 97. I'm trying to see what's it about. The story is about the dangers of eugenics centered on three objectively genetically blessed white people. All right, well, that sounds very problematic these days.
It doesn't sound like a space movie, though.
No, it sounds like a sci-fi movie. I don't know where the space. See, and I think this, the first line they have is it's an original sci-fi movie, right? And I'm like, okay, but where does space come
says,
into it?
Vincent Freeman has always fantasized about traveling into outer space, but is grounded by his status as a genetically inferior invalid. He decides to find his fate by purchasing the genes of Jerome Morrow, a laboratory-engineered valid. He assumes Jerome's DNA identity and joins the Gattaca space program where he falls in love with Irene.
I might have actually watched this at some point.
That
That sounds so familiar. Because he wants to get into the space program.
And then he goes into the space program. So space.
Yeah, okay. No, that's the motivation for it, too. He
Yep.
wouldn't
All
have gone
about
through
going to
this thing.
space.
Yeah, I got to give it to them. Yeah, I'm not going to argue with it. And it sounds like when you started reading that, because I was trying to read through this once, but it's more about explaining. In what's his name's vision of the space is less futuristic than old school and blah, blah. I'm like, okay, that doesn't tell me the story. But yeah, no, that sounds okay. And I think I've seen that now that after you read it out, it sounds vaguely familiar. Particularly the purchasing the genetics part.
Yeah.
That sounds like something I've maybe watched a movie about before. So maybe I have, but anyways, next on the list is a Star Wars movie, so it's Rogue One. We could probably just hop past that then.
Yep.
Because we already kind of talked about that. So number 22 is The Martian from 2015.
I haven't seen it, but I would not argue that is
Can't argue.
not
It's
a space movie.
it's about surviving in space, and yes, the setting is space, but it's also the premise is that he has to survive in there. It's not just that's where this story takes place. The story is that he has to survive in this outer space. So that's why. And it is pretty, wow, my words weren't coming out. It is a pretty good movie. It was pretty critically acclaimed, I believe. And I just enjoy it because it's kind of funny watching Matt Damon just be by himself for this certain period. You get a fun cameo in it that I don't want to spoil for you just because I don't know if it's been spoiled for you or not.
I don't think so.
But yeah, it actually ties to another space movie that came out around the same time. But in the sense that the cameo is an actor who was in another space movie at the same time. But yeah, no, I think you would actually probably really enjoy this because it's just
I just have to get around to watching it.
No, definitely, it's one of those ones where it's like I get where it's like you can put it off until eventually
I could watch literally anything else.
Exactly, and I can't argue with that either. Can't argue with where it's placed on the list. I might have put Galaxy Quest higher than this, but that's about it. So next up, number 19 on the Ringers list is Space Jam.
This
is one where we're getting into a little trouble.
I have a hard time with that.
To me,
Not
besides
because
like,
it's Space Jam, but because of the criteria that we've set out.
well, no, I was about to say like I don't think this is really a space movie. Like,
No, sure, it's aliens from outer space, and it's called Space Jam, but
But
there's very little to do with space. We don't even really see them travel.
yeah, like because you like for me, it's like if the fact that you could interchange these space Martians with anything else, and you wouldn't have to change the story that much. You know what I mean? Like you could have it as it's some people in another country who wanted him for a theme park. It's like, okay, that's the exact same story, doesn't have to involve space. So it's like space isn't central enough to it because the theme is good versus evil, bad for basketball, or fought via basketball, right? Like that's the main premise of it, the theme of it, right? So space is,
I'm gonna put it under the same kind of umbrella as E.T.
yeah, exactly, where it's like
It's kind of you could make an argument for it,
yeah,
but it wouldn't be very strong.
it's because I feel like it's maybe because they're both those like kind of I don't want to say cliche, but they're based off the like the this is the good versus evil. E.T. is about a boy making a connection with a
Creature.
yeah,
Could be
creature. Yeah, that could have been a dog. It could have been anything.
But a
Yeah.
mountain lion.
Yeah, exactly. And they were just scared the mountain lion was going to kill everybody. Like that's it. Exactly.
Like,
It's exactly. So that's where I feel it's a little bit like that. Whereas this one, you could have changed the Martians. I can't remember what the space monsters are called now. They have some name. I don't know. I haven't kept up with this. I'm so bad. I didn't get enough sleep. They might have just been
the Monstars.
Monstars. That's it. I knew it had some kind
That's
of
just
pun
their team
name. Yeah. But yeah. So I would say same category as E.T., where it's like, okay, if somebody really wanted to argue with me about it, I'd be like, fine, whatever, leave me alone.
It's a space movie.
Fine.
Those are the same people that say Die Hard is a Christmas movie.
Exactly. Where I'm like, okay, whatever, people. Like, you don't like, you got your weird, like, simple, like, black and white definition, I guess, of it, where it's like, which is ironic from me, doing all this talking.
Yep.
But
you painted yourself into a little corner, and now you want to talk about gray areas. It's fine.
Well, see, to me though, like I've kind of like this criteria I have set up does allow for these areas of gray with like the ETs and stuff. I think a little bit, like it is a little bit like where I'm still defending that I personally don't think they're space movies, but I could see why people would consider them space movies.
Yeah.
As I try to wash away some of the paint. Next on this list, number 18 is Star Trek from 2009.
I think you could say the same thing about any of the Star Trek movies.
Yes, they're more about the politics.
But they all fall in because if
yeah,
you could, I guess technically you could say you could transport any of these films from their setting and change the whole idea.
Yeah,
it'd still be a movie. So
yeah, let's not go that far. Yeah,
everything.
No, but this one actually,
I think it relies on the space.
The space definitely plays into it more because it's like it is the politics. Like, yes, you could change out politics and stuff, but also like this one in particular,
it's exploring.
Yeah,
what would happen if Earth needed to interact with other?
Exactly, that's the idea: is us exploring space. So it's like, yes, you could kind of like the only thing you could really replace it to is making it a historical thing about us exploring Earth. So it's like, okay, that's a little bit more. That's like, yes, technically time is part of a setting, but it also puts in context different things. Like you have different opportunities and different stuff. Where's my paintbrush?
Start with a different color.
Yeah, but this one though, so this Star Trek in particular is a little bit more spacey because like it does have a little bit more themes involved with space. There's there's actually time travel. I guess isn't too spacey, but they use a spacey thing to do it, so it's hard to say because there's a lot of spaceships too, and that's where it's different than Star Wars because even though they go on spaceships, they're not on spaceships as much as in Star Trek where they're always on a spaceship.
Yeah.
Like so yeah, that's one again though. If somebody really wanted to like push, I'd be like whatever, like definitely space, but if someone wanted to like try to use my own criteria against me, I'd be like fine, whatever. But next up is one I mentioned actually before, which was Independence Day from 1996. Again, it's about an alien invasion.
Yep.
Yeah. Again, my painted corner. We could go into way too many details, but we'll just move on.
We've decided to accept it.
Yeah, we just decided to accept that it was a bad premise that I came up with. Next one up is Predator, coming in at number 16.
Again.
You could have this as any kind of killer
Yeah.
beast thingy, so
But it's not just any kind.
yeah, well, that's the part where it does make it different than it, or because it does, the fact that it is from outer space does play into its advantage. You know, it has technology that's from outer space that we can't have. So this is, yeah, that's my justification, and Arnold. So
All right. Keep it in.
next up is another Star Wars, The Force Awakens at 15. Yeah, we already talked about that. Next is Planet of the Apes. Ooh, this is an interesting one because it's
That doesn't Oh man, that's tough.
this is a very weird one.
Isn't the concept of Planet of the Apes? Correct me if I'm wrong. I've never seen it.
You've never seen any of them?
I have seen a Planet of the Apes. The most
which
recent
one? Okay, wait. Of the new trilogy, you mean? So you've seen one of those? Have you seen the most recent of the new
most
trilogy?
recent one. Yeah.
So you didn't watch the whole trilogy, you just watched the last one. Okay.
Yep.
I just wanted to clarify that I
That's
was
all
on the
right.
right page.
I just needed to see that one.
Hey, I haven't seen that one.
I
so
understand the whole story. I just saw that one. But isn't the concept that humans have left Earth?
well, so it depends on which I think which. So I don't know the original one, to be honest, that well. I've seen the original one, but that one I didn't see. I've only seen the first of the originals, because there's like 4, I believe, of the original ones, or maybe more than that. But I've only seen the first of those original Planet of the Apes, and in that it ends with him realizing it was Earth. They don't really go into, but the humans I think were like slaves to the apes in that one, as I think tends to. I think this newest trilogy is the only one that doesn't have that as a theme of it, because the 90s one with Tim Burton also had that as a theme where the humans were slaves of the apes. So it seems like you're on a different planet, and then eventually you come to learn that it's Earth. So it's like, well, is it really about space? Because he goes to space and ends up in going through like a wormhole, and that's how he ends up like back on Earth, but in a different time. But they don't imply like, is it? Well, it kind of implies that it's the future because you see the Statue of Liberty buried in sand. So it's like, okay, this is some distant part into the future, but it's also like
I'm
space.
reading the original kind of idea.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a future Earth where humans have destroyed themselves through nuclear warfare.
Yeah. So to me, this like the only part that space plays into this is it's the avenue for him to go.
It says they made a different version. It says Charleston Heston played 20th century American astronaut George Taylor, who travels to a strange planet where intelligent apes dominate mute primitive humans.
Yes, but then at the end of that one is when he learns that it's Earth. That's what I mean. So it's weird that it's
kind of a space movie, but kind of not.
Yeah,
because the idea is that we're exploring this other planet, and then
the revelation at the end is it's
just
Earth. Yeah, and so like the Tim Burton one did a better job of implying that he goes through like something. Well, I guess actually Charles Heston one does their best attempt at special effects and showing that something weird kind of happens to him before he gets there. But I think maybe they imply that there's some kind of technology that they're maybe, I don't remember. I know in the Tim Burton one, so that's my problem is I get the mixed up. I know Tim Burton one the best just because that's the one that came out in my lifetime. But in that one, it's like, he's supposed to be using like, I think a new type of drive or something like that, like a new type of engine or whatever that would create some kind of whatever to make you travel quicker, I believe. But then that ends up just sending him through time. And in the Tim Burton one, they actually kind of end up explaining it because he discovers the fact that it was Earth, and he puts together the mystery and finds out that it was this, experimental. It was this ape that they had used to test that drive originally had somehow gone back and changed whatever. But then at the end of that one, also he goes back through time and ends up on a planet on Earth, but it's normal Earth, but it's still got apes, but they're in like police uniforms, and Abraham Lincoln was an ape. Yeah, and that's how it ends. So the Tim Burton one's Tim Burton.
Very much so.
Yeah, but that's also one I know better. So I think to me this is a less. Again, this is one that's kind of like the ET category, I would say, where it's like, fine, if you really want to argue with me, my criteria that I've set up, whatever. Yeah, he goes to space and then ends up back on Earth. Sure, fine. I guess it's a space movie, but to me, this is a sci-fi movie that, pretends it's a space movie, if that makes sense. Like, if you don't know the twist, which I'm sorry for ruining for you, but it has been around for like a very long time.
I knew the twist.
Okay, I figured you did. It's a very very well-known and parodied thing. I know it's been parodied on The Simpsons, I believe, at least. So yeah, to me, this is more a sci-fi than a space movie, which this category seems to be kind of using interchangeably sometimes, I feel. Because it still says it's one of the articles, it's the most successful sci-fi with its depiction of . I'm like, well, okay, like they're not interchangeable, because a movie can be a sci-fi movie without necessarily being a space movie, and a thing can be a space movie, and without it being necessarily
being a sci-fi.
Exactly, because like
Very
Apollo or whatever, like whatever the Apollo number,
13.
that's the number. I can't remember which one was the actual movie, to be honest, because I'm like, I know they are all different ships, but yeah, so like that one's not a sci-fi, it's a space movie though.
Yep.
Which I'm assuming is going to be higher up on this list.
It better be.
Yeah. But what was next? I just kind of scrolled past something. Okay, number 13 is Gravity from 2013.
So I've never seen that. but
Neither have I. I'm not going to argue with
have
that.
to agree. I have to agree with
I'm just
it.
going to agree just because I haven't seen
Literally
it.
floating in space.
Can't argue with that. So next up, number 12 is Spaceballs, which oddly I feel is more a space movie than Star Wars is, but
I'm having a conflict there because I love Spaceballs.
I do too. It's a
But
great one.
It's a parody of a movie we decided
wasn't a
really
space movie. Yeah, exactly. So I think oddly this one though still falls more to the ET category than even Star Wars does, because it is a parody. It does have more like references to, like, it has some kind of pop culture-y references, a little bit more like with him selling a bunch of stuff with like the merchandise joke with why can't I remember the guy's name? The fake Yoda. What's fake Yoda's name?
I can't
Well,
remember. It's been
okay.
so long since
So it's not just me. I'm just like blanking. I'm like, what? It's something kind of like pun or something. Like, I know it's Mel Brooks who plays him, but I'm just blanking on his name right now. But yeah, anyways, I wouldn't argue about this one though, again, because to me, I wouldn't even think about it, because like spoofs.
It's yogurt.
To me, that's what it was. That's why I couldn't remember it. Yeah. Okay. And the Schwartz. Yeah. So yeah, I'd probably, I guess, put this in the same category as Star Wars, just because you can't, like, again, it's just the setting. But to me also, like, it's weird. I find, like, I think, like, parodies and comedies in general, I think, to me, there's a main genre and then there's a subgenre for certain movies, if that makes sense. So it's like you've got action comedies, but some of them are more actiony than comedy. And so this one's, a little bit more, because it's a parody, to me, it's just automatically a comedy. So putting the other things into it are just kind of like, well, it's just the elements in order to make these jokes, if that makes sense. Yeah. But next up is a movie we already discussed and decided that wasn't, and that is Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yep, not a space movie.
Not a space movie. It is a team adventure about this group of ragtag people coming together to save something.
And
yes, it's the universe. Like,
space does not really.
It's like it's the setting again, yeah. Because like you could change it to they were on one planet and they had to escape prison and then get across a country to get to this thing and then to that, and like it wouldn't change the story that much. You know what I mean? Like space only plays into it by bringing in different types of different races of aliens and different locations, exactly. But it doesn't.
Then otherwise you could make the argument that Endgame is a space movie.
Yeah, and it's like, well, no, it's not. It's really so very much not a space movie, and that's to me where the line really comes down to, is like, just because it takes place in, that's for me is the big thing, is like, just because it takes place in space doesn't mean it's a space movie. You gotta go a little further than that, and that's yes, that's a very black and white kind of line, but it's also like a little bit like, well, I require a little more nuance than just you slapping on and saying, oh, it's in outer space, so therefore it's a space movie. And it's like, well,
if it also took place on December 25th, would that make it a Christmas movie?
well, see, that to me is like exactly where it's like, well, is it about Christmas? Was it about some dude who just was trying to, survive in a building overnight where that was being taken over by terrorists? Like, does Christmas is the kind of, I guess the could be the MacGuffin, the reason for them being at that party, but you can also be like, oh, it was St. Patrick's Day, it was this day, it was that day. Like, it doesn't play into it being like, other than I guess the holiday season implies that it take longer for the police to respond. Maybe that's the biggest stretch of that one I could go with, but yeah, no. Die Hard's not a Christmas movie. On to the next one. Is another thing we've already kind of used as a example we were discussing, which is Avatar. It comes in at number 10. This one I think is a little bit more like Star Trek in that it's because they're exploring an alien planet and it's about, oh god, I am kind of painting myself into this corner now.
Because it doesn't take place in space.
Yeah, no, you know what, actually, I'll agree. I'll taking this off. It's not a space movie because
we haven't even
this is an analogy almost for freaking like people coming to North America. Like
no,
it's that same thing.
It
It's very much that same story now that I'm like thinking of it out loud. So it's like
Pocahontas with blue people.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'll agree. No. I've only seen this movie once, so
I've never even seen it. I know
it's not worth it. It's not worth it. It's so long and it's just like, I don't know. To me, it was such a like basic story, and I was like, "Yeah, I get it. They're coming to this thing. You two fall in love." And now that you're saying like you use the perfect, it's Pocahontas, and I never thought of it at the time, but it definitely is just alien Pocahontas. And that kind of explains why it was such a big hit. Like that makes sense. It's Star Wars Pocahontas.
People like repackaged stuff.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of repackaged stuff usually, but
especially if you slap a different label on it and don't tell them what it is. Like,
wait several years.
Yeah. Then you're like, do you paint with all the colors of the wind? Just blue.
Nice. Just blue. All right. So next up is another Star Trek, Wrath of Khan from 1982.
Wow.
Yeah.
Digging into the back catalog for the Star Trek.
Well, this one is this one's interesting because it is the most like critically acclaimed of all the Star Trek movies. Like even
it's one
including
I've
the
heard
newest
of.
one. Yeah, exactly. The Wrath of Khan.
I could have named it. I've never seen it, but I could have named it.
Yeah, it's a great story. Like, but again, I'm trying to think. This one, we already talked Star Trek in general, meaning that it is a little bit more about this. Space plays a little bit more of a role because it is about this thing of. Oh God, I'm not going to do this. This one in particular, though, is a little more sci-fi because it is. They go up like the Khan in it is he's a like part of a race of genetically enhanced people. I think I might be getting that mixed up with the new storyline too. But yeah, we already talked about that one. Let's move on. Number 8 is Apollo 13, which we already discussed.
Yep, on my list too. Obviously, love that.
Of course, great movie. I honestly can't say anything bad about it. It's just a good movie, good space movie, proper space movie, as we also said, a space movie that isn't a sci-fi because this technology existed. It's a period piece technically at this point. Like,
yeah, it's a documentary, sort of.
Oh, what's the word? What's the expression for it? It's like not a fake documentary, but like, well, it's based on a true story. So yeah, no, not
based on a true story.
Yeah. Yeah. So next is another one I'm guessing you have on your list. Number 7 is 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Kind of shocked it's not higher up.
I also would agree,
considering it is the space movie.
I would agree. The space movie. This one's a lot of these next ones are just ones we're gonna be like, okay, man, come on.
So
you know what? It's number 2 on the list. Okay, it's number 3 arguably on this list because the ones it has above it, I'll give them 2 of them, and I'm grouping the like. 3 of them are Star Wars. Okay, so I'm like, I love Star Wars, I really do, but we've already discussed that a bunch.
Trilogy?
It's the whole original trilogy, exactly. Okay. It's just like, okay.
I was just like, where are you guys gonna place? Like you
literally 3 of the top 5
movies on the list.
Yeah,
and you can't have one of the original trilogy if there's only 4 on the list.
Yeah,
There's just not enough room.
They've got 3 of the top 5 are the Star Wars original Star Wars trilogy, which I agree are great movies,
Yes.
but they could also be about like King Arthur's knights. Like
We are, yeah. It's debatable about whether you want to call it a space movie.
like the only part that's like really like you could argue is because of the Death Star.
Yep.
And that's
It's a
like
space station.
it's a space station.
That's no moon.
Yeah.
So the one of the 3 that is the most spacey of all the movies is A New Hope.
Yeah, no, I'll agree. That's the first one. It's the yeah, no, I'd say so, I guess. Cuz
How many space scenes can you think of in
well, we get into this weird one cuz
Empire?
like Empire, he's on an alien planet.
Yeah,
and
but
then
it's just a bunch of different alien planets.
in return,
It's
well,
just
that's true. He could have been in any swamp. That's
cut,
true. He could have been in
cut.
swamp, a desert, anywhere. That's a fair point. But the last one does have a Death Star again.
Yes.
So
it's closer.
They are both closer.
But the spaciest movie is definitely
A New Hope. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we decided that, and we both agree that even Space Odyssey, I would say, maybe even should be higher than those. I love Star Wars. I have so much Star Wars merch, and I watch Star Wars all the time. But I can say that freaking the Space Odyssey is a better just movie. Like
space movie.
Exactly. So, but we will discuss the next couple that they do have. One of these I have not seen. The other one I've kind of seen. So next is The Right Stuff from 1983. Have you seen this one?
No.
It looks like I recognize like one person on the cast, which is what's his name? Ed Harris. Yeah, I recognize him. Dennis Quaid's in there somewhere from what I'm reading in this, but I'm trying to.
Makes sense. It's like, so this is basically the other side of Hidden Figures.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. It makes sense why it'd be on here. It's about
Yeah.
the space race.
So it qualifies.
Definitely.
Obviously.
Can't argue with that, and I can't argue with whether it should be this high or not, just because I've never seen it,
Never
so I
seen
can't say if it's that much better than what's next, which we're gonna say is their number one besides Star Wars for space movies, which is Alien from 1973. In their defense, they actually had 2 Alien movies. I just grouped them. It was number 3 and number 6.
That makes
I
sense.
just, figured we're gonna our comments are gonna be the same. So, but yeah,
Never
it's
seen
neither have I completely. I've seen parts of them. My parents watched them a bunch when I was younger. I remember that, and the fact that it grossed me out and freaked me out when I was younger. But I do remember when Alien vs. Predator came out, being like, "Fucking alright!" First crossover that I got like in my lifetime. It was awesome. So, and then we got Freddy vs. Jason after that, or around the same time. I was living in heaven. And then nowadays it's like, okay, yeah, sure, you gotta kind of have to do that. You're like, wait, but early 2000s, that was great shit. But yeah, the originals, I can't argue with it. It's in the name of the title, aliens. It's about being in space aliens infecting them. Like, I guess like if we really go into it, we could talk that it could be any creature, but it is also like, well, it would have to be some kind of weird ass creature because nothing on Earth does what it does. Like, as of right now, and the fact that they're in outer space, I think, plays into the fact that they're trapped with this monster a little more so than we get on Earth. More so, like Earth, like even when you're on the ocean is the closest equivalent to like being in space when you're on Earth, because that's the only place where you might end up where you can't immediately escape safely, whereas in space, obviously, you're kind of stuck there. So. Yeah. That's where I'll give it. That's where I'm like trying to really justify my points from before, because it is very much just the setting. Besides the alien, it is just the setting, 'cause it takes place just in one spaceship. The whole like the original one, I believe, is just all in the one ship. But again, that one's also too like when I think of it as almost more of a horror. Weirdly enough, even though it is definitely a space and a sci-fi more than it is even a horror, but I think it's just because it terrified my young mind.
Possible.
But yeah, so did we miss any space movies that you had on your list in this top 25?
I have 2. There's a lot of space movies out there that are kind of mediocre.
Yes.
So they're not really worth talking about. I don't think they mentioned Arrival, but we talked about that already.
Yeah, we briefly talked about that.
There's a movie called, I'm pretty sure it was called just Moon.
That's a more recent one, yeah. With who's the actor? That's
It had Kevin Spacey in it, but
was it Kevin Spacey who was the role? I thought there was.
No, he just plays a computer.
Yeah, I'm thinking like who's the. There's a title role. Because I'm trying to think. I'm thinking the poster. I'm like, there's an astronaut on the moon in this poster, and that's all. That's my image of it. I'm
Sam
like, who's that?
Rockwell.
Sam Rockwell. That's who it is. I was like, I knew it was some kind of name actor who I actually knew the name of. That I was like, why am I forgetting this? No, I've heard really good things about that. I've not seen it myself.
It was. I really liked it. It was on. It was on Netflix for a while, and that's when I watched it.
Yeah, it's just one of those ones that slipped past me, if that makes sense. Because it came out around, I think,
2009.
Okay, so that's a little bit before like Interstellar and The Martian came out, but
we were still in high school.
yeah,
when
so that's
Moon
kind of
came
why I
out.
missed this. Yeah, I definitely just kind of skimmed past me some point in high school.
Well, it wasn't really a blockbuster.
Okay, see, and that's that makes sense
But
then why I wouldn't have heard of it.
It's similar in concept to Oblivion, the
Okay,
Tom Cruise one.
all right.
Kind of. The idea is that he runs into his clone,
Oh, okay.
basically, but on the moon.
Huh.
So that one's on my list because I like it.
No, that sounds interesting. And I've heard, like I said, I've heard really good things about it. Like
I would recommend watching it.
I've heard it's like one of Sam Rockwell's like best performances.
It's the only one I think I can remember seeing him in. So
Okay, that's fair.
that doesn't mean a lot because
No,
I
he-
can tell you who Sam Rockwell is. So.
He does play a lot of these kind of like he tends to be a supporting actor, I think, more often than a lead man. Like he was in the second Iron Man, if that helps you.
Yeah,
He was
no, that doesn't help.
okay.
I know I saw that. I don't remember it.
That's fair. That's the one that comes to my mind immediately that I just go to because I'm, like
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Yeah.
So
But
the only other one that's on the list,
Yeah.
that I have here, that 100% qualifies as a space movie, is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
definitely, I can't argue with that. As a space movie, it is about the. Yeah, that one is so strange and so out there. It has to be about space.
Exactly. And it's, the whole concept. Is
Yeah, aliens
space.
abducting him, turning Earth into like selling off Earth to make a.
Yep. Blowing it up to make a bypass.
Which I just love that as a theme. I love that like a bunch of the aliens are like they're all British. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, no, it's a great one. I gotta rewatch that.
You should.
Yeah, I just is it on anything right now? I have to check
I don't
that.
know. I'd have to check to see.
Yeah,
if
I'll
it's-
check that after. But yeah, no, I definitely had to rewatch that, and I always forget that it's what's his name?
It's not it's Martin
Freeman. Yeah, I was almost calling Martin Short. I'm like, no, it's not
Nope,
that.
not Martin
It's
Short.
not that. I was like
Better
Freeman. Yeah,
Better
it's-
guy.
and I always forget that it was him because that was before I knew him by his name. Like I remember seeing that movie before I started to recognize, started to connect names to the actors that I do actually now to so you can actually be less of a it's that guy. I still do that way too much, but
Looks like it's not on anything.
yeah, all right. Well, I'll just have to buy it then.
Yeah, it's on all the buying things.
Yeah, well that's one of those ones that I would be happy to get just because I'm like it's good enough to just pop in every once in a while. It's just a fun little thing.
I think it's worth it.
Oh, definitely, I agree. The one.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I was gonna move on to another thing that the lists missed, which was one of my favorites space movies, which is Armageddon. This was actually on the other list, the 15 list. This was number 15 on the other list. That's why it sparked in my memory that it wasn't on this 25 list, which is it's about a freaking meteor. They have to go to space to blow up a meteor. Like, how much more space can you get? And it's awesome. It's got a great soundtrack. I still sing that freaking song all the time. Yeah, I love Armageddon. It's just one of those ones. Again, it's one of those ones that did come out in my lifetime too, so that helps play into its role. I believe it did. That or my grandparents just had it on VHS the entire time I've been alive. It's one of those two.
that makes sense.
But yeah, that's the only one that immediately came to my mind of space movies that this list had missed.
So I was just going through the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy thing,
Yeah.
and it said Sam Rockwell. Yep, there he is. Sam Rockwell's in that movie too.
Oh yeah, I forgot because
And-
he's got the blonde hair in it. He's the
Yes.
yeah, that's why. Yes, he's what's his name in it? I don't know the character's
He's
name.
Seyfried Beeblebrox.
There it is.
He's the president of the universe.
That I knew he had some kind of position like that. That I was like, yeah.
And Alan Rickman's in it too.
Oh, he's the robot. He's the voice
Yep.
of the robot.
He's
Yeah,
Marvin, the depressed robot.
which is such a great character. I love that character.
John Malkovich is in it, and Stephen Fry is in it, and Zooey Deschanel is in it.
I remember Zoe Deschanel being in it. I'm forgetting. I'm trying to think
Stephen
where.
Fry is the narrator,
Well, that one. No, I remember seeing Fry.
and John Malkovich is just a small part.
Okay, that's probably why I
I'm
don't
just
remember.
I'm
so
just
much.
naming people that
Yeah, well,
naming people I know.
that's fair. That's fair. What is it? Is it Mostef that's in this one?
Yeah.
Okay. See, and I always am never sure about his name because I'm like, is it
Yeah,
that?
'cause
Did he change it? See,
He
and that's
did.
the part I don't know.
He shows up on IMDb as Yasin Bey.
Okay, and see, and that's a name that I don't feel comfortable trying to pronounce because I wouldn't want to insult him. Like,
Yeah, it
But-
looks like he changed his name sometime around 2013.
that's fair because I knew he was he started off, I believe, in hip hop or as a rapper
Yeah,
or a DJ of some
something
kind.
like that.
Yeah.
He got a lot of music credits.
Yeah, and like I knew because I remember that being like kind of why like he stuck out more to me in roles was because that was like something that was kind of noted was that he made that transition. Just did a quick search for space movies. The first ones on Google popping up are a lot of Star Wars stuff again. Gravity, Ad Astra, which was the inspiration for this.
Yeah, guess we probably should have mentioned that.
Probably. Well, not that many people went and saw it. More people actually in North America saw the Downton Abbey movie than they saw Ad Astra, which
Wow.
baffles my mind. But
Ouch.
but we are talking in the double digit millions, not like superhero numbers in the triple digits. But for those types of movies, that's kind of it's an interesting one because it definitely had a far higher budget than the Downton Abbey movie, which takes place in one location, an abbey.
Yep.
It's in Downton, I believe.
Plus, it was a TV show.
Yeah, so it did have that like little bit of an audience like kind of built in ready for it, where this one just had like all I could tell you about this one, space, Brad Pitt. I don't know any other
all that
details
matters.
about it. Yeah.
That's all that matters.
I went and saw Rambo myself, which was a mistake. Which brings us into what we watched
Yeah,
this
what'd
week.
you watch this week, Scott?
Yes, so I went and
Rambo.
saw the new Rambo, Last
Yep.
Blood. It deserved its critics' ratings. Now, I'm not saying that it didn't have some good parts. The action was good. It was Rambo action. But this movie was just... I felt like I'd already seen it, if that makes sense. Like, that's what I said in my review a bunch of times. I'm like, 5 minutes in, I knew the plot, and it did not deviate from exactly what I thought the plot was going to be. Like, it's just a classic, action movie about a guy who was retired or kind of out of the game and gets drawn back in for some reason.
So you mean it's
And
a
then-
Sylvester Stallone movie?
Exactly. And so like some people had a little there's been some the critics didn't love it, obviously, because it's just kind of a very basic thing. Some of the writing and the dialogue, like when I notice dialogue isn't good, like me personally, that's when you know it's not good, because like it felt like I wrote the dialogue. And if anybody who knows me knows, I don't think I can write dialogue because I don't know how people talk. And so when I'm like watching a movie and I'm like, this dialogue is bad. This is like the stuff I wrote during creative writing in grade 12B, because that's my reference point for my personal writing of trying to write dialogue for things, is trying to write short stories with that. And so like when I'm watching a movie or anything in the dialogue, I'm like, no, this is bad. Like this feels like an awkward conversation I've had on Tinder before. Like what? Like come on, Stallone or whoever. I don't know. I think Stallone was one of the writers, but
Maybe George Lucas wrote it.
it's possible because it was just so by the book and so like if like another thing I said actually in the review was if I was actually assigned in creative writing in 12B to write, a old age Rambo, I would have written this movie, maybe with less racial connotations because it's all about him going like fighting a Mexican cartel, and it does have a lot of things where I'm like, this seems like, are you a Trump supporter? That's what I got a vibe from the movie a little bit too, where I was like, okay, this seems like a movie that Trump may point to as an example for some of his beliefs on the Mexican people.
It's a
and I'm like,
it's Galaxy Quest all over.
well, that's where I'm like, to some people it may come off that way, and I'm like, okay, this is an interesting choice of villains in this day and age. But okay, it also does slightly like just. I can see how it could be justified, which is it takes place in Texas, I believe, is where his ranch is or something, somewhere in the South like that. So it's like, okay, I kind of see where the closest thing you, I guess, could come up with is a Mexican cartel, but that also seems very lazy and, so, yeah. Didn't love it. I'm not like, I feel like I'm hating on it a lot more than I actually felt about it, but it's also just because lots of people think just because it has good action that makes it a good movie, and I'm like, well, no, you might have enjoyed it for its action. I liked the couple action scenes, but this is a movie that I'll watch the action scenes on YouTube later and never watch the full movie again, because it's like that's not a good movie to me. Like if I only want to watch, like I rewatch all the Marvel movies all the time because they're great movies and great action movies. I don't want to just rewatch the action. I want to watch the stuff that builds up the story, that builds to the action, not just our hero mowing down a bunch of people, because I do love that, but I like the build up to that more too. And I felt Rambo kind of let me down because it was, like I said, I felt like I'd already seen it. I felt like I'd seen this Rambo movie before. It's just he was older.
Yep.
like different, and it was weird because it's also like it didn't feel like it connected to the other Rambo movies that much. I'm not a Rambo expert. I always think of Rambo as the second Rambo, and like I saw that one before I saw the first one, and so that when you see the first one, then you see the second one, you're like, wait, you started this way and went to that? That's okay. All right. But he did play to his audiences, but yeah, I wouldn't recommend going to see it though. I'd say wait.
I'm probably not even gonna see it.
Yeah, no, and you're not
seen any of the other ones.
Well, and then you're you're not missing out on there's nothing, like I said, you already described it. It's a Sylvester Stallone movie, like a recent Sylvester Stallone movie. It just had a higher budget than the ones that go straight to DVD. Yeah. Like that's all. It had it had a character that has a franchise attached to it that is now maybe over.
Who knows?
It's hard to say. Well, it's called Last Blood, so it's not a spoiler if it is. So. Yeah. Yeah, so I watched that, and then I've been spending the whole weekend watching Legends of Tomorrow, DC's Legends of Tomorrow. That's one of the DC superhero shows, the most last year's season, which I didn't keep up with while it was on TV because I don't have cable. So that one just got recently added to Crave, so I've been keeping up with that. I know you probably don't know anything about this show.
Nope.
Nor probably don't care.
Yeah.
Even Andrew has trouble keeping up with me on these things too, so it's okay. No, I get it, and there's not much really to talk about. I just like the show. It's a goofy show, and I enjoyed it. I'm enjoying it exactly. And so, like, to me, the only thing I kind of will say is that it is the one great thing. I think this one's the best of all the DC ones because it takes itself the least seriously.
Yep.
But it also has the advantage of being a time travel show, right? So it has that fun advantage of being able to like have different, like a little bit more fun because it can do, like one of the episodes I watched this, they were doing like, they were experimenting with, what if we screwed up the timeline? It was almost like a Groundhog Day episode, but not quite. Not they were repeating the same thing, but they were trying to fix it, but they kept coming back to a even worse and worse future of somebody else being dead, if that makes sense. And then they go back and try to fix something else. And each time they came back, it was a different 80s TV show trope. So the first team was the A-Team kind of a trope. And then it was like a Golden Girls trope. And then there was a Charlie's Angels trope. And I love the stupid things they do like that. So that's the fun part about the show that I think kind of makes it stand out from the other ones where It's like, oddly enough, it's the one with the most superhero stuff, like the most superheroes, but also the least superhero-y, because it more is a sci-fi show almost, because it's time travel and all these kooky things that they're fixing history most of the time, or trying to prevent problems in history. And this season they throw magic in the mix. So I really enjoy it, but I won't bore you anymore with details of Legends of Tomorrow. But yeah, the only other thing I've been watching is more Stargate, because yeah, love that.
Obviously, gotta keep going.
Gotta keep going. But that's all I watched this week. What did you watch this week, Craig?
Well, I was off sick on Friday, so my list is a little bit longer
Nice.
than normal. I finished Family Guy season 17.
Right on. My brother, I think, is
was-
about to start that.
It was a season. It was pretty good. There were a lot of funny things, but then
Yeah.
there's just like,
They're getting to that point like where the Simpsons hit pretty much when we were like, I'd say, coming of age or like coming into teenage, or where the Simpsons kind of starting to fade off. It still had it's still popular. I'm not saying it's not popular, but it's not as popular. It's not in the zeitgeist as much. I'd say Rick and Morty is more in the zeitgeist nowadays than Family Guy is.
Couldn't even watch any of that.
Yeah, no, I haven't watched Rick and Morty, but I just mean like, you know what I mean? This in like pop culture, it's more often in the trending and stuff. Like I couldn't tell you a new episode of Family Guy since the Brian episode, like since they killed off Brian. That was the last thing that caught my
That's
eye.
a long time ago.
Exactly, and that's what I mean. Like, 'cause it's nothing's catchy. Like it doesn't appeal to me
it's
anymore. Really,
it's just episodes.
Exactly.
Which is good.
to
Like,
you
it's
guys, it's like the superhero shows for me. I think for you guys, it's just
Yeah.
a thing that you're comfortable with. You're just happy to get more new stuff of it, because it's like, well, yeah, I've got no complaint about getting more of this. Yeah,
Exactly. So there's no complaints, but it's not like life changing.
yeah. There's not much to say about that. I like this season.
Is not in season 17.
No, see in there, and that's kind of what I was trying to get at more than anything. It's like it had its peak, I would say, a while ago. Well, not a while ago, several years ago though.
So I did that on Friday. I also watched a bunch of Archer season 9.
Nice, that's
which
on my
has
list.
been interesting.
What's the concept for this season?
The interesting thing about Archer recently is that they got away from their, well, for obvious reasons, because it's hard to really justify having a
Spy organization called
ISIS.
ISIS. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
especially
That was
after
just
what
some
happened.
poor. That's just some like misfortunate.
Yeah, exactly.
Like there's only
you
so
got- you
many.
have to find a creative way around it.
Yeah, and
So
I
you do.
and I love the direction they went with it, doing these weird
They just
concept
went off and did weird
seasons.
stuff.
Yeah.
I like that.
I agree.
So this is Archer 1999,
Oh,
and it's in space.
nice. Oh,
And-
90s space. Ugh.
So it's all a bunch of space tropes, and it's still at its core Archer with all of the jokes,
That's good.
except it's
In a different time, space.
it's like Vice or whatever they did, Dreamland or whatever it was called, when it was all Archer's coma.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's the one I like. That's where it like really like. I liked Archer before that, but that's when it started to catch my eye a lot, because I was like,
well, because then every season's a completely different.
and that's what I like. That's what I need for for me to keep up with a cartoon, where it's like they don't tend to have like a plot driven thing. Like that's the closest I get to a plot with it, which is okay. We're getting this like weird random thing that they're just gonna it's
keep doing the same jokes but different jokes.
Yeah,
that's good.
just different settings and like coming up with, in a sense, a new way to like kind of remix the joke into this different era or setting or characters they're pretending to, archetypes that they're pretending to fill, if that makes sense. Yeah, no, I really enjoy it. Like, then what was the other season? There's a coma one, and then last season was the island. No, I think I'm 2 seasons behind. I might be a season behind.
Well, they did Vice, which was when they were selling cocaine.
Yes. Right, yeah.
They did Dreamland, which is when they did
like 50s Hollywood thing, right?
yeah, that was when it was all Archer's coma.
Yeah.
And then at the end of that, it goes into 99, I think.
Okay, so I'm on. Okay, I thought there was I thought there was a season after Dreamland. I think is
There
what it
might
was.
be, but I can't remember. It's been a while
Yeah.
since I've watched a lot of it.
Yeah, and that's where I haven't gone back into the 9th or started this new season yet, is because I'm like, I don't know if I'm behind or not.
The other thing that had a new season, because they all came at the same time, is Disenchantment. That's the
Yeah, my brothers started with that one.
yeah, that I've made my way through a good chunk of that.
What do you think of it?
I like it as much as the first one.
Okay.
It's not a great show, but it's not terrible.
That's
So
fair.
I'll watch it. It's enjoyable.
Well, see, for me, it's an interesting thing because it's the first like new thing my brother's watched in so long.
Yeah.
Because he's a repeat offender, or he's just watching YouTube a lot. So it's interesting. Like this is the show that like sparked it. Like, because Family Guy and Archer were both at it, I think a couple days before Disenchantment actually was, like just like literally like maybe like 3-4 days before, but he hadn't started those yet, and then he started with Disenchantment. So it was just interesting to me because like I've caught in bits of it, but for me, like nothing. It's just a lot of going over my head, kind of, or stuff I just to me isn't as funny. Like
it's very much it's kind of like a watered down Futurama kind of idea.
yeah, and that's the feel I kind of got from it too. It just
Not as good.
it felt like when Futurama would like do one of those like side pans to something that they were making a joke about, if that makes sense. Like this could be like this could just be like the sewage city, just as medieval times instead, or a planet they wouldn't visited.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I haven't really watched more than that. But what else? What you were talking, not me.
Same day. Remember a while ago I talked about a series that was Explained?
Yes, there's a new one. Yeah.
Netflix and Vox. So they put together The Mind Explained.
Oh.
And I watched a couple episodes of that. So I watched an episode on memory and an episode on dreams.
Oh, I'm definitely going to watch those ones.
It's a good series.
It's finally
it's
like
same.
The problem I had with the last series though is just a lot of topics I just wasn't interested enough
Well,
in.
they were all over the place.
Exactly.
But
This one a little more like, teach me about the brain. Give me those different like.
So that's basically what it is they go over like, why does this happen? How do we think it works? And what are we studying and all that stuff.
Okay, I like that. I'm definitely have to check out those ones.
I would recommend it. If you don't watch the other ones, you seem like you'd be really interested in the Mind.
Oh, I am just like crazy fascinated with dreams and stuff like that. Like particularly dreams, but yeah, no, I'm really fascinated with how the mind works.
They go into like how lucid dreaming works, and
which I believe I have the ability to do. I'm fairly certain. If what lucid dreaming is what I think it is, I'm pretty sure I can do it fairly easily.
Control over the dream.
Yeah. And and the reason I'm like confused about that is because I've only ever been able to do that when I remember a dream.
Yeah.
It's
so
like
they go over like how you kind of end up with that and that kind of thing. So it's good.
Definitely, I might check that out if we're done this early enough.
They're not long bits.
No, I remember that. Like that's the thing. That's a positive I like about them.
Minutes, yeah. And it's the same kind of style as the original, which is what I liked.
Yeah. No, like I said, like the only thing that didn't catch me about the first series, I watched a few of them.
Yeah.
I think I watched just some of the topics were just like
they caught me. I think the first episode's the racial wealth gap.
Yeah, and I think I watched that
and
one.
That one wrote me in. So I watched all the rest of them because that was just so freaking well done.
I think is there a weight one? Is there one about diets or something?
There might have been one on diets. There was one on K-pop. There was one on.
Okay. There was one I watched that I think put me off of them because I didn't love their style. There was something it probably was the diet one, if there was a diet one, because those tend to put me off sometimes because I'm like, I know a little bit about this stuff too, and this is your research on this isn't 100% on board. I don't know for sure if that's what was, but that's what will put me off some documentary type stuff sometimes too, is where I'm like, I don't agree with your methodology on this, like how you came to your conclusions. So,
let's see what else. Dragon's Den, more episodes of that came out, so we're watching that.
I did see that get more seasons get added, and I was like, wow, is there even that many of the original dragons left at this point?
Jim Treliving's on it.
Okay, I was about to ask. I was like, I think his name's Jim, right?
Arlene's
Boston Pizza guy?
Yeah, Boston Pizza guy.
Okay, I liked him. I liked him being around because he didn't take shit.
Exactly. So it's been good. And then last night we started the 6th Harry Potter film.
Oh, right on.
I don't know.
Yeah, you're getting into the dark, more
I'm-
adulty ones.
I'm having a hard time well, that's part of it too.
Yeah.
Is I went from watching a series about a bunch of children to a movie about
Yes,
a bunch of horny teenagers.
They grew up. It was a weird transition
Very,
for them.
very fast.
Yeah,
Very like all of a sudden, like one movie.
yeah, they sprouted up over that year or two
Yeah.
off they had in between that movy.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
it's
I'm just-
it's a little offsetting.
I'm having, because now I know nothing about the story whatsoever.
That's fair.
So I'm having a harder time following the character progression for certain characters.
I can't blame you on
But
that.
I think that's part of the intent of the story, so I'm going to keep going with that.
Okay, I know. I was trying to piece together what part. Like, I don't want to spoil it for you.
No,
I did.
No.
I did have the advantage of going in having read the book,
Yes.
so that's why I was just thinking like maybe that's why I just hadn't thought about that. But like you are very right. I could see where you have that confusion. I do want to say I think you're right in your thoughts about it so far.
It just feels like it's in the intent of the story.
Yeah, this
Is
one
to
definitely
be
focuses a lot more
confusing
on their
on
character
purpose.
development. Yeah.
Yeah.
This.
So that's
Yeah, which I kind of like that one. Like that one, I did like about is because that's the one where they're on the run, right? No, that's the next one. So this is their last year at Hogwarts, I believe.
sure.
I haven't watched these in like a year, and I'm
I
trying to post them together without giving the big spoilers away. But okay, what have you seen in this one so far? I'm trying to figure this out.
I'm trying to remember.
Is this the? Oh, how does this start off? How did it start off?
It's the Half-Blood Prince. It's the one where he finds the book.
Okay, yeah, no, okay, yeah. I was getting this a little mixed up with the next one. That's where I was a little bit like, I was just getting this mixed up with the seventh. Because the seventh is they divide the seventh book up into two.
parts.
That's where I get the story. Like I get the movie's timeline mixed up sometimes because of that. But no, now that makes okay. Yeah, no, This one's definitely was the weird turner point. That's the one that's probably one of my least favorites, to be honest, actually. The Half-Blood Prince. There's parts that I really like about it, but like I particularly like them diving into more of the lore. Like sometimes I hate things with lore, but this one I was like, no, give me this lore. I've had enough of it. I've learned enough about these characters over these first 5 movies. Give me some lore. So that part I really enjoy about that movie. But yeah, no, that one's got I can't talk about it anymore. I'll spoil it.
Perfect. That's all I watched this week.
Right
That's
on.
it.
Yeah, you had a nice little list.
Yeah, that's what happens when I'm off sick a day.
Yeah, no, I understand. Mine's the opposite because I haven't been sick lately.
Yeah.
Damn me and my. Well, no, I was like a month ago I was sick, but that doesn't matter because we're at the end of the podcast. We should be thanking our listeners for listening to another one of these episodes. If you made it this far, tell us if you made it this far. Send us an email or a comment on one of our things anywhere, just so we know.
Episode 104 next week.
Yes, be sure to join us then
Absolutely.
for a very special episode.
Very special.
Yes. Hopefully Andrew better be back for next week. It'll be a very weird episode without him.
Internet problems.
Yeah. But anyways, thank you all again for joining us, for those of you who made it this far. And bye.